What's up, everyone? Welcome to Level 7. It is time for another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I'm your host, TJ Zwarich. I hope you enjoyed the intro. I hope you can run it back, watch it 30, 40 different times, because this may be, I can't confirm, but this may be the last week with this intro. We might have some new intro music coming as we can start changing a few things up on YouTube, and going really well. So if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell. We see all you new viewers. We appreciate you joining us to talk about the Acolyte and Star Wars and all other things as well. I am joined, as always, by my co-host and good buddy, Adam Blevins. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing good. Last week you just told me, you were like, I hate that you're working in news anymore because I can't surprise you. And then your opening statement here, I know we had new music coming, but I didn't know it was already going to be next week. Now I'm very excited. And you've already, 1 minute into the podcast, you've already outdone yourself and surprised me. But yeah, I mean, similar to last week, I hate so much of the negative conversation around this show. It does seem, I've blocked out so much of what we've gotten recently, but it does seem like generally people are enjoying this episode. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are, finding their problems with it, the kind of people that are not going to give it a chance and hate it anyway. But I'm very excited to talk about it because this was a really, really great episode.
It was. And I'm going to try and get some hot takes here because I think it was maybe one of the best episodes of Star Wars television, at least in live action, that we've seen. So I'm interested to see what you and our guests think about that. Joining us for the very first time on the podcast, we got a very exciting guest today, content creator, film journalist over at POC Culture, Jorgie Rodriguez. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
We are very, very excited to have you on today. I know you're a very big Star Wars fan. You got to go to the premiere of The Acolyte. So I guess before we even dive into the show today, give us a little background on your Star Wars fandom. When did you become a fan?
So I've been a big Star Wars fan since I was a little kid. My mom got me into it. Back when Revenge of the Sith was coming out, we lived in Las Vegas. And so we went to the theater about 14 or 15 times when I was like 4 years old for that movie. And then the Clone Wars movie came out when I was about 7 or so. So I got those two theater experiences as a kid. But it wasn't until like Rebels came out and the canon reboot happened that I got like as into it as I'm in now. And then like with the Journey to the Force Awakens, Lost Stars, the Aftermath trilogy, like that is kind of like my like canon event, or like I just like really got into it, and now I'm like a sucker for all the books. Like I have the special edition of like Light of the Jedi behind me, the leather one from Celebration. Then a few years ago, I got started for POC Culture writing Star Wars comic book reviews. And then it kind of turned into doing like film stuff. And so like realistically, like Star Wars is just kind of like where it all started for me, really. And just Star Wars means the world to me. So yeah.
I love that so much. Rebels was my kind of canon event, as you said, because that was for me where I liked Star Wars, It was just something I liked. It was good. And then Rebels and Clone Wars, but in particular, Rebels really just made me fall in love. The characters and the stories, it just turned it from, this is okay. I would guess I'd say I'm a fan, to, wow, this is one of my favorite things that exists. Who's your favorite character?
I'd have to say Ezra. I got him right here. Like as a little kid, I think Ezra was one of the first characters I ever felt represented by, because obviously, he's brown and I'm Latino. So for me, I was just like, whoa, and I really just like latched onto him and loved him so much. And then like Rebels Recon, like and the Andy Gutierrez show, that was my stuff. I would just like watch that religiously, and that stuff is what got me interested in becoming a journalist as well. So like it all goes back to that for me. Yeah.
Heck yeah, I love that so much. And us Ezra Bridger fans are eating well because Amon Esfandi is just the absolute perfect person to be playing the character. We got, before we talk about the Acolyte, another edition of Whatcha Watching. Adam, we were talking before the show. You've written, I think, what is some 38 articles today in the last 3 hours or something like that already. And when you're not writing, you got shows to be watching. So even if it's for work, it's okay. What you've been watching?
Okay, well, just to set the record straight, 38 articles today in the last Not that much. That is like that's an absurd number. I've written between 30 and 35 or close to 40 this week. I think so far. It's been a very busy week, but that's news. But yeah, I don't, to be honest, I'm still working through a little, like I finished Severance, which was absolutely incredible. The season finale, it's like, how some shows end where it's like you have this crazy climax moment and then there's like that 15-minute kind of wind down and it's like, okay, where are we going next? This ends at the climax. Like the final seconds of the finale are, I'm like, I don't know if I've ever been more excited to see what happens next, because usually they just give you something like that big moment happens and they give you a tease, but no, Severance literally ends on the climax. So I can't wait. And I think we got to wait probably another 3 or 4 months for that. We got the first teaser, but that, a little bit of Ghost of Tsushima, about 15 minutes at the time when I have time. And then usually I get called back to work on something, but no, other than that, it's been just about the two of those. And then pretty much only work stuff. I hate so much that when you call on me for this, that I can't talk about The Boys or House of the Dragon, because those are like two of my favorite things. I was like that and The Acolyte. Those two and The Acolyte are like two of my favorite things going right now. And it's like
the stuff that's out, you're more than welcome to talk about. But I know when you're writing so many articles and you're deep in the screeners, it's hard to kind of remember where the cutoff point is.
Yeah, you're right. That's a great point. So I'll keep everything, because I know for both shows I've seen farther ahead than what's out. Press privilege and all that. I know I just made myself sound so icky. I always hate talking about screeners because it's like, screeners, like press privilege. But no, yeah, I mean, still a lot of stuff going on that, like a lot of great. I know we talked about how crazy this summer was going to be with like great TV shows, and to me, it's living up to the hype. All three of these shows, it's going to be a while for me before I can watch The Bear, but all three of the shows between The Boys, House of the Dragon, and The Acolyte, I'm loving all of them so far.
I am through 8 episodes of The Bear. I have 2 left, and then I'll be writing my review up for agentsofandom.com. I've just started, my wife and I finished Castle. She's done her procedural with Castle. We got through all 8 seasons, and now we're on season 2 of Will Trent on it's on Disney Plus here in Canada. Not sure where that one is in the States, but Will Trent is what we're watching now. And in one of the episodes, our guy Clark Gregg, Phil Coulson, pops up as one of the characters, and so that was pretty fun to see him show up there. I know I don't fault you. I know you're busy, but you didn't answer my text message. I have 2 months before Star Wars Outlaws. I need one more game to play before that comes out, because I'm done Red Dead Redemption 2. Do I go Rise of the Ronin? Do I go Fallout 4, knowing I've never played a Fallout game before, or do I just replay The Witcher 3 again?
Rise of the Ronin's another tough one that's hard for me to give direction on, because I was writing about that game like every single day. Like I was playing up to a point where I could write about it and then stopping playing and writing, because I was doing gaming features at Stream Rant just as fast as I could. Like I was the only one playing that game, so they were constantly like, "Hey, when you get to a point, can you do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play. I'll quit what I'm doing and play right now and get up." So it's like I almost was in such a state of being zoned out that I don't even quite remember how much I liked the game or not, because I was going back and forth between playing it. But I do think it was a really, really good game. It's fun. But Fallout, I mean, it's hard for me to put anything else against Fallout. And like the great thing about Fallout is when you said you've never played a Fallout game, you don't have to. They're all, these games take place on the same timeline. They're all like in the same universe, but they're all self-contained. There's like a few characters that, kind of make a little like cameo, like kind of like Stan Lee stuff. Like you'll see like in phases 1 through 3, you'll see a character pop up, but there's no like pre-established stuff where if you play Fallout 4, you'll be like, man, I don't understand what's going on, because they're all self-contained stories. So I love that you called me out for not responding to your text. But yeah, I'm gonna say Fallout 4 first, and then Rise of the Ronin if you have time.
Okay, I like it. Jorgie, how about you? What you been watching lately outside of The Acolyte?
So I'm gonna cheat and I'll say I've been reading the High Republic books, because Acolyte made me really want to like get back into them. So I just finished the Battle of Jeddah, and now I'm on to Cataclysm and Path of Vengeance. I'm not really sure which one I'm gonna do first, and I started both. But I've also been watching The Boys, which I'm gonna cheat because that is kind of for work, because I did a couple interviews last week. And then I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends, because I'm really into like FPS games. And that's what I've been doing lately.
Who's your Apex character?
I've been playing a lot of Vantage and Wraith right now.
Friends of the show are the Metra, and that's Overwatch. I always mix up Apex and Overwatch. Never mind. Ignore me.
I love
I sound
Overwatch
like a
too.
fool.
I'm
Oh,
also
there it
addicted
is.
to Overwatch. So yeah,
We have some actors in Overwatch who are friends of the show, so I like plugging them whenever I can. But I got
that's so
got
cool.
them mixed up. But unless it's still a secret, who plug your boys interviews? Who do you got coming?
I interviewed Eric Kripke and
Nice.
the actress that plays Huey's mom, Rosemary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Eric Kripke's been having some banger quotes lately that have just been going crazy from interviews. So that's pretty awesome. Great work on that one. Let's transfer into the Acolyte though, because this is a show on all of our minds. This is the show that really took the internet by storm this week, episode 5. It's the one that so many have been waiting for so long. We've talked about screeners. Well, they released 4 at once. And so the people who got screeners have been waiting on this one for a long time, and now it's here. Jorgie, what have your thoughts been on the series as a whole so far?
So as a whole, I've been really into it. So a little like shameless plug, I got to do some interviews for the Acolyte last month. And so when I was there at the junket, this publicist from Disney came over to me and my friend and she was like, "What did you guys think of the show?" And I just started yapping for like 3 minutes because I like could not shut up about how like being a High Republic fan and a Star Wars fan, this has been everything I've been wanting to see for years. And mind you, this is before episode 5. Like since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to see fast-paced action similar to like Clone Wars stuff, which I didn't know that at the time. But like it's just been everything I've been wanting to see with how diverse it is, how many queer people are in front of and behind the camera. Um it's been like a breath of fresh air, honestly. I've just been loving it. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. It has been such a fun show so far. Spoiler warning for episode 5, Night. We're diving into it now. If you have not seen the show yet, get out of here. Join us again afterwards, but I'm guessing you have. What else would you be doing here? Adam, what did you think about episode 5? It was a long wait, but finally here.
Yeah. So I really like this episode. I will say it's not quite I'm not quite as high on it as I think some people were. Like I wouldn't personally put it in the, like this may be one of the best episodes of Star Wars TV I've ever seen. Like whether you're, classifying it as live action or including animation, it's still really good. Like to me, it's got to be, to put it in that conversation, this has to be between like 9.5 and 10, like so close to perfect that it's almost indiscernible. And I probably put this episode between 8.5 and a 9. And we'll talk about a couple of my, which is like still a really good score, by the way, for what it's worth. Like that's, I know
Adam
we're in an
hates
age
the
where,
episode. You heard it here first.
I know we're in an age where, nuance can't exist, where if you say something like that, everybody's thoughts are immediately like, okay, so he just hates the episode. But no, that's not like, I love this episode. I think it was great, but I do have a few qualms that I'm sure we'll get into later. And they're honestly more personal things that aren't quite working for me as well as I wanted them to. Things that I was excited about going in that are not quite living up to what I wanted, which I know is a me thing, because it's always better when you go in with no expectations, because then you can't be disappointed. But I had some expectations for some things that I wanted, and we're not quite getting them, at least to the level that I wanted. So while I think this is a really, really great episode, the best that we've gotten in the show by far. And like I've enjoyed all the episodes, I still think this is the best with a bullet, like by far. It's not quite in that like 10 out of 10 perfect, one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen range for me.
Not quite Luke showing up at the end of Mando for you. Would that be near your top tier ones of Mandalorian?
That's a top tier moment. I don't know if I would classify that as a top tier episode in general, just because like when I think about it, like I don't remember much else from that episode. And like the best episodes of Star Wars TV, I can almost remember like generally what was going on throughout the episode. Like that was a great moment, but I don't know if I would put that in there with like the all time, like the the Prison Break episode of like Andor is up there.
Mm-hmm.
And like to me, like the Boba Fett, the Mandalorian episodes, I think the first one, especially of the Mandalorian and Boba Fett, like episode 4, I think it was, because he got 4 and 5, like those two all time. Like I know those, within the context of that show, they're not great because you're missing, like you're moving away from your titular character to focus on somebody else. So it's like if you judge them as Boba Fett episodes, they're shit. But if you judge them as like Star Wars TV episodes, I think they're really,
As
really
Mandalorian
great.
episodes, they're top tier.
Right, exactly. So, and then there's a couple of there's like one Ahsoka. It was whichever Ahsoka episode was in the middle. I think it was like episode 5 when they first got to that other planet. I can't quite. I'm just telling on myself because I was like the best ones I can remember almost everything, and then I'm starting to actually try to remember, and I realized how just mush my brain is when it comes to remembering stuff. But no, yeah, it's I wouldn't. But just to get back to your original question, because it just took me a minute to even remember what you asked me. I've been rambling for so long that. The Mandalorian, like the season 2 finale, getting Luke Skywalker was really, really cool, but I wouldn't put that like that wasn't enough to take that whole episode up to like a 10 for me personally.
Fair. What about you, Jorgie? The Acolyte, episode 5. Where does it kind of rank for you among the other 4 we have seen so far, and what'd you think?
So before I get into that, you mentioned like the wait for like screeners was like long. So like I think I saw 1 through 4 about 4, close to 5 weeks ago. So the wait has really been gnawing at me because like the way 4 ends, but they all just get pushed back. I was like, are you kidding? And then I did the math and it was 5 weeks. I was like, no, which is the best problem to have. But still, I was like, oh man. So once I saw it, and as soon as you see Chimera fighting, I was like, let's go. I was just over the moon, and like all of the fight choreography was, like I said, everything I've been wanting to see. So like to me, it's like one of my favorite episodes of like Star Wars media, like as it stands right now. As like a television episode, I'd say I think episode 3 is over 5 for me, but in terms of like my favorite, it's 5. Yeah.
I can't remember a time that Star Wars has shocked me like this. And I'm not talking about the reveal of who was under the Darth Thief mask, but just throughout this episode, the twists, the turns. I was mind blown as it was going, but I'm happy you brought up that fight choreography because that's what I want to talk about first. As much as I adore Ahsoka, the Ahsoka show, that is still my favorite live action Star Wars show. It brought me the Rebels. It brought me more of my favorite character. It was great, but the fight stuff left just a little bit to be desired for me. Like it looked fine. It was totally good, but it just kind of seemed like a little slow. Like it just kind of seemed a little slow. And maybe that's because I'm so used to seeing Ahsoka in animation where she is such a speedy character. And obviously you can't move in real life the way you do in animation. It got pretty damn close in the Acolyte. Like the fighting in this was just so incredible. It was unique. It was fresh. We got the Cortosis armor, which we'll talk a little bit more about with the deep cut there from the Clone Wars. It was just so splendidly, beautifully choreographed. And the stuff with Jackie in particular was like number 1 for me. I just thought she was so incredible. Chimera, I can't ever remember how to say his name, but he was just Chimera was so wonderful. Menacing, just hot, and just scary, you know, like he's just fucking awesome. I just general thoughts on the action as well, but the question I want to ask everybody is that the best live action Star Wars fight we have seen since Duel of the Fates?
I wanted to go back to the Ahsoka thing really quickly. I think like with Filoni, I feel like he was leaning into like more of the samurai fights, kind of like, with Obi-Wan and Maul, like when I'm forgetting the name of the episode, but like that type of fight. Because like when Ahsoka fights Marok, it's very much just like a one move fight. So I feel like he's kind of leaning into that versus like this is like leaning into like action movies and just really like fast-paced, nitty-gritty stuff. I'm so sorry. I forgot what the question was because I wanted to say that.
No, that is no worries. I think that makes sense. But one of the things that I think from a storytelling standpoint, I think you're absolutely spot on. But to me, like Daphne Keane, what she was doing with the lightsaber, and all of them, Lee Jung Jae and Charlie Barnett, like all of these people have been great. But Daphne Keane in particular, that to me is like Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor level of lightsaber skills from the actor. Like it's just, I don't think I've seen that from anyone else.
Right. That's what I was that's what I forgot. Yeah, so, like, I definitely think this is the best live action fight we've had because it's like there's, like, the different styles with the different stuff, like The Rise of Skywalker and, like, the sequels are more, like, slow and nitty-gritty and, Ahsoka feels more like samurai inspired to me, but then this is just, like, violent and dark and, like, gritty, like, Chimera's fighting style. It's just like he's going for the kill every single time, and then he gets them, but then also the Jedi are also going for the kill every time, which is what I feel is also a difference between this and like the prequels a little bit. Where like I'm a prequel baby. I love the Phantom Menace, best Star Wars movie, but it's like um a little on the flashy side sometimes, and so which I love. But this, in my view, is also flashy, but practical in the sense that every single slice feels like it's for the kill. And like Daphne, she was amazing. Like Jackie, oh my gosh, like when she's doing that like twirly spin while she's like backing up, and then like right before that thing happens when she's like attacking him, they like do like a little circle, and I'm just like, what? I watched it like 10,000 times and I was screaming the whole time. To me, it kind of surpasses Duel of the Fates, I think, and I think it matches the energy more so of like the Star Wars Old Republic cinematics. It felt like unreal stuff we've seen in animation brought to life, and I was just like losing my mind watching it.
Couldn't agree more. Animation brought to life is exactly how I would put it here as well. Adam, what do you think? In general, thoughts about the action, favorite bits, and where would you rank it in terms of Star Wars fights?
So before I get into that, I want to answer your question with a question. When you said the best since Duel, like, so you think that Obi-Wan and oh my God, Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul, you think that's the best live action Star Wars fight that we've gotten?
That or Anakin versus Obi-Wan in Revenge of the
It
Sith.
has to be that. It has to be. And like Duel of the Fates is great. Anakin versus Obi-Wan is like 20 minutes straight of like the best. I don't think anything will ever top that to me, for me personally, because like that's one of those things that I have oftentimes not like as much time to rewatch movies as I'd like, but I like rewatching scenes, especially from like Marvel and Star Wars, like those high moments that we have especially when I'm feeling down about something. Like I can go watch something in like Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame, or something like that, like the Cap coming out in the trains, even if it doesn't make sense. TJ, like you said the other day, you ruined that moment for me. That three normal humans are the ones saving Wanda and Vision. Ever since you said that, I can't look at that moment the same. That's just completely ruined it for me. But
I never thought about that before.
Me either. And TJ told that to me, and now I like can't rewatch that scene and feel the same. Because I'm like, you're right. This doesn't make any sense that it's three normal people saving like two of the most powerful Marvel characters. I just got way off track. But to circle back to
Sam and Matt just pull out some regular guns and they're like, "Oh, we're here."
It's like Wanda could literally rip them limb from limb, but like, no, yeah. And I can't. If I go down this path, I will not.
She didn't know how yet. She didn't know how yet.
Yeah. That's
Maybe
fair.
it's
Yeah,
just they needed the distraction, they just needed extra bodies to throw at the villains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Narratively, it made sense. They like the villains caught Wanda and Vision off guard, whereas Cap and the team caught the villains off guard. It makes sense that way. It's just kind of funny seeing how powerful Wanda becomes. That it was like the humans that just come in and save the day.
Yeah, oh, for sure. But yeah, circling back, like I said, I think one of my like the choreography was all great. Like I have nothing to complain about with that. I think this was some of the best like action that we've ever gotten, like up there. Like I think when people look back, this will be in that top 3 to 5. Like you won't be able to talk about the best 3 or 4 Star Wars fight scenes without mentioning pretty much this entire episode, like what goes on. One of my favorite moments was when Jackie was fighting the stranger, and we get like her lightsaber gets kind of cut off, and so she grabs Kelnaka's. But then hers comes back on and she's wielding two. She reminded me of Ahsoka wielding the 2 green lightsabers. I love that so much. But I think what I love the most about the choreography in this episode is that they did such a great job making Chimera feel like he was on the offensive. And like to the point where we're going to talk, when we talk specifically about Chimera later, I'm going to talk about this because I've got a quote from Manny Jacinto that I can't wait to talk about and give some more context to. But I love so much that it felt like he was really he was trying to kill Jedi, and Jedi were trying to stay alive. That's how this, like, from start to finish, that's how it felt. Like, it felt like he got them on their toes immediately from the time he pushed them at the end of last episode. And I was stunned when we first pick up and they're already fighting and he's already killed like what 3 or 4 of them. And I was like, okay, so he is here to play. Like, he is not playing, but he is here to play, because holy shit, this dude he means business. But throughout the episode, and especially when we get to the end, and he's like telling Master Soul, he's like, attack me then. That's right, you can't because of your stupid rule. That like summed up pretty much the feelings of the whole fight. Like, I felt like they brought that same, like, it wasn't just like guys and swinging lightsabers at each other, like people swinging lightsabers at each other. It felt like there was real emotion and like also thought put into how they were fighting, which is something that I really appreciate, because that's like not an easy thing to pull off in Star Wars, because like a lot of lightsaber fights just kind of feel like people swinging sticks at each other, that there's like light to them added in post. And it really felt like there was an emotional layer to this that just added to me, like on top of what was already some really great choreography. So yeah, this is absolutely unequivocally for me in that top 3 to 5 range for like Star Wars fight scenes for sure.
Couldn't agree more. It was just such an incredible display it was just like, as it was happening, it was cool to see. You know, we make your jokes throughout the whole like first 4 episodes. You either love them or you love to hate them, essentially. But one of the things I found really interesting is you see how Yord has become a Jedi Knight when you see him fight. He was doing better than all of those other people. And you know, until the end, and until Jackie comes in, and it's like, fuck yeah, Jackie, my girl. Like, she just reminded me so much of Ahsoka. She fought so well. The dual saber stuff, I am always a sucker for it. And so I agree with you, Adam. That was so incredibly cool, and she was better than all of the Jedi Masters at fighting. Maybe even Soul. Soul may be a little better, but Jackie was close. And it was like, we haven't seen a Padawan, or she wasn't a Padawan at this time, but we haven't seen a Padawan do anything close to that since like Ahsoka versus Maul. That was like what that fight really reminded me of. I have the thought. I'm sitting there thinking, you know, because as Ahsoka is my favorite character, Jackie is really starting to become one of my favorite characters of all time. Bam! Chest, neck. That was literally the pace of like, she's really becoming one of my favorite. I say it out loud. And then 3 lightsaber stabs, 2 to the chest, 1 to the neck. R.I.P. Jackie, my queen. I love you. You're incredible. Daphne Keane, amazing. So sad that she died. And then immediately after, has there been a neck snap in Star Wars before?
I don't think so. I mean, like force choke. We've gotten some force chokes where I think we like Anakin and Darth Vader in I think it was episode 2 or 3 of Obi-Wan. He snapped a kid's neck with the force. Because I remember when I saw that, I was like, holy shit. That, like, it was like you literally hear the snap and everything. They murdered a child. So we definitely haven't gotten, I don't think, like a walk up behind somebody and snap, but Vader has used the force to do it a time or two. But I think this is a little more visceral and like violent. To see him actually walk up behind him and physically snap his neck was something I don't think we've seen before.
I feel like in the Clone Wars, Grievous does something like that, but as far as live action, no, it's like it's the first time, and especially since you see the whole thing, it's like I was scared when I saw that. Like, I loved Jackie so much, and like you said, I was rooting for him. Like, you go, girl! And then she goes in and she starts fighting him. She's on the offensive, and then he just catches her off guard. And I was like, oh, she got like a little too in the moment. If she had like waited for Soul's lightsaber to come back up or something, like she didn't seem to like hold back, and that I think was a little bit of a downfall, which sadly. And I've watched the action scene so many times, and because her fight sequence right before she's killed is so cool, like they do that like circular motion, I watch it over and over again, and every single time she screams and rushes him, and then you just see the 3 stabs. You know that like feeling you get when you want to start crying on the inside, like before it happens? Every single time I feel like I'm about to just start like sobbing because it's so brutal, and then it like cuts to her face and the eyes. I'm just like, I love the High Republic because that's just what they do to us all the time. I love it.
And her line or from earlier in the show, we are defined by what we survive. My girl, I'm so
And then
sorry.
she's like, never be sad to watch someone else transform into
Mhm.
the Force. I'm like, I'm gonna be sad right
Oh,
now watching you transform into the Force. I don't care that you told me not to be sad earlier. I'm gonna be sad because I agree. That was devastating. And
I want to
also to
cry
me,
every
very
single
unexpected.
time. And I'm not being dramatic. Every time I feel that feeling like in my throat, where I'm just like, no.
And like it just really did raise the stakes so much. It shows you, yeah, this is a High Republic show. We're not afraid to kill off anybody. And it felt like, well, I was watching something like, obviously a lot less blood and gore, but like something like Game of Thrones, where it was just like, anybody can die at any point. Um, and the fights with the cortosis, were so incredibly cool. I want to pull that up because that was like the most common thing I saw on the internet this week. It was like, and that was my first thought too, was I didn't know what this was right off the beginning, was how is he blocking this stuff? Is that with the Force? How is he shorting out these lightsabers? And so I'll pull up Wikipedia. Shout out Wikipedia. They've been going through a lot. We stand with Wikipedia. And the quote they have pulled right at the top is from a Clone Wars episode. The material is called cortosis. It's very rare. I've heard stories about it, but never seen any. It's rumored to have unusually high energy absorption and transmission coefficients to the point where many energy weapon blasts will be dissipated along the fibers without damaging the fibers themselves. Incredibly rare metal, even more rare than Beskar. And we haven't seen it before in live action, and so that was something really cool to get to see. It was his helmet was covered with it, his gauntlet had it on it as well. That was really cool. But even as amazing as his fighting was, what really established Chimera as a menace for me was when he goes right after killing Jackie. Was that its name?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And man, how dare you? How dare you? Like, she just gave you the best fight. Treat my girl with some respect. And just, was that its name? Was so menacing, so terrifying. And then immediately calling Soul on him and all of the Jedi on their hypocrisy. Soul says, as much as we love Soul, that she was just a child. And he says, you're the one who brought her here. It's a great fucking point. The best villains are the ones who make a great point. Adam, we kind of thought we saw this reveal coming, but Leslie Headland talked about this. You were kind of supposed to. It was foreshadowing. That was the goal. This isn't the big mystery of the show. What did you think of the big reveal, the neck snapping, all of it?
So I was happy to see that we got we learned that the stranger and the Sith Lord was Chimera, excuse me. Because I was afraid, like we talked about last week, that we were going to get this scenario where they treated it as some big mystery, and we learned at the very end of the penultimate episode who it is, or like at the very end of episode 6, and then the penultimate is a flashback, and then the same kind of thing we've seen Marvel and Star Wars do like 100 times before. Save their reveal for near the end, give us a flashback, and then have like a class. So I'm so glad we didn't get that. I will say there was the part of this episode that made me the most angry. That then I feel fine about now, obviously, because it wasn't what I thought. When he got carried away by the bugs, I was like, if they just killed this man by getting him by him being carried away by bugs, when like at the beginning of or the end of last episode, beginning
What
of
is
this
this, Ant-Man Quantumania?
that's exactly what I was gonna say. It reminded me so much of Kang getting killed by ants, or getting defeated, I should say, by ants, because I was like, this man. I mean, and I'm not gonna be mad about I'm still a little annoyed that he because like with what happened at the end of last episode, beginning of this episode, whatever. That takes so much power to just force push that many people. I'm like, just do that, but up. You'll kill all of them. Like all of them are going to splat against the trees. I'm like, unless that's the kind of thing that you can't tap into, but so often. But like the only time we've seen that being the case or something is like Grogu, who is a tiny little baby who he gets tired when he has to use the Force. I don't feel like Chimera was in any kind of situation like that where he couldn't have just looked up and just splat like all of them. But I felt much like I was I was 100% pissed off about that. And then when he came back, I was like, okay, we're good. As long as, because I know he made it out. Like he got up there and killed them and made it out, and he's fine. So I went to like 99% or like 1%, I should say. Like I'm barely even, like it's still funny that he got carried away by bugs, but I don't care because he survived. But I do, while we're talking about him, and now's a good time to bring up that quote. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because I know you wanted to talk about what.
I'll just say the part before he got carried away from bugs is actually what pissed me off. This is Obi-Wan leaving Darth Vader to live all over again. You guys, fuck your rules. This person is going to kill so many more people. Osha, don't tell Soul not to do it. Soul, ignore Osha. Chop the bad guy's head off. Because, like, he's just going to cause you more torment. You won. He's not defenseless. You won the fight.
It's like the Batman and Joker dilemma, right? Like Batman refuses to kill Joker, even though Joker is just going to keep killing and keep killing and keep killing.
That one doesn't even bother me as much because, like, I get he has a line. You know, it's like, I will never cross this line. I will never kill. Their abstract rules make no sense. You can kill somebody when you're fighting them, but if you knock their saber down, then you can't. Then you got to, like, quickly stop at the end. Like, what does it matter difference what their position is if the purpose of the fight is to kill? You're both trying to kill. Just
Well, see, that's where I actually disagree because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I don't think the Jedi were fighting. I don't think Soul was fighting to kill him when he
wasn't until Osha stopped him, though. He was about to do it until Osha stopped him.
That's fair, but I still think there's like, just like by the nature of how they're trained and their mentality, I think Jedi are more defensive fighters. Like I'm not saying like maybe you're right that if Osha hadn't come along, he would have just killed. And I 100% agree with you for what it's worth. Just kill him and be done with it because like it seems like that should outweigh. Like I don't know. It's just like we talked about this last week too. Whatever the Jedi are doing, I just generally feel like I wish they were doing the opposite of that. Like I just don't. It doesn't matter what decision they make, but I'm just like I just don't like this. Just do the opposite of what you're doing right now, and I think you'd be on the better path. Because it seems like every time they do, like when it comes to stuff like this, it's like, here we go. The Jedi are fucking up again. Like that I feel like we say that with pretty much every Star Wars project. And I can't remember if it was, I think it was you, TJ. It was either you or Arzu, but I believe it was you that made the point last week that, and I 100% agree with it. It was a great point that Jedi individually, like operating by themselves, I think are generally really, really good people, and they do the right thing regularly. They're good at thinking on their feet. But when they're subject to this group think and they have to follow these rules that have been laid out for them that they haven't even really been given a chance to decide whether or not they agree with them. They're just kind of are forced to blindly follow them if they want to be a part of this order. That's where I think they make these mistakes where like so many people are like yes, the Jedi as a collective are stupid and they make a lot of poor decisions. But I don't think Master Soul is an idiot. I still love him to death. I love him. It's not like Master Soul's an idiot. It's like the Jedi in general are idiots for making him, like hindering him, kind of cutting him off at the knees, like for doing this one instead of when he could just do the right thing. I don't know. It's the Jedi just drive me nuts.
It's that's what makes Star Wars so beautiful, though, right? Because I want to make sure we don't forget. You want to give the Manny quote too. So I want to get Jorgie's take on this conversation before we get the Manny quote. But also, isn't this what makes Star Wars so great? Is because in a different context, that almost could have been like a straight quote from Anakin Skywalker. You know what I mean? Like, this is too much oversight. I need to just be able to do what I want to do because I'm because I know what I'm doing, you know? Like, it takes too long to get things done when we go through the Senate, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, but we're both pro-democracy, right? It's just that, like, this group of Jedi is not a democracy and they're idiots when they all get together. Jorgie, what do you think of the whole Soul and Chimere Osha telling them not to kill dilemma?
So I don't think the Soul not killing him has to do with like Chimere being disarmed. I think they're not supposed to kill in general. I feel like it's more of like because they probably want information on him and stuff. I don't think even if he was armed, I think they'd want to disarm him and take him, right? And so like with the thing with the bugs, the reason why I'm like okay with it is I'm like, okay, well, besides this, how do you keep him alive and also escape? Because if he got stunned, then he'd have to wake up. It gets like messy, you know? And so like for like where they're
You
going,
gotta
I feel
chop
like
off
it
his
made the
arms.
most
It's the only
sense.
way. You gotta, if you're
um,
not gonna kill the bad guy, you gotta chop off their arms.
you know, yeah, for sure. And then like when it comes to Soul fighting Chimera, the thing I noticed was that like, you know, Jackie's fighting style was really aggressive and she was like yelling a lot. So she's kind of like leaning into like the aggressiveness, whereas Soul kind of had like the shackles on because he's trying to be a Jedi, not be too violent or whatever. But as soon as Jackie dies, that is all gone and he's straight up like intent on murder and leaning into his darkness. And so that's kind of where I think that Osha was right to tell him not to kill, because it's like he was leaning into his emotion and just his rightful emotion over like Jackie's death. But I don't think that that would have been the Jedi way necessarily, because like when Anakin kills Dooku, he's like, that wasn't the Jedi way. So I just think it has to do with that. And like, I think the Jedi being flawed, I think that's part of the point for Leslie, is that like this is an institution at the end of the day that she is critiquing and putting on blast that like I don't feel is usually done in live action, or like as blatant, that like this is an institution, they're not always in the right, and this is actually like the harm that they can do. And one of the things that I thought about this morning when I was rewatching the episode was when Chimera is telling him like, oh, what did you do with your darkness or whatever. I was like, oh, this is interesting because we have a Sith and a Jedi who potentially manipulated these kids to join their cause, and those are both equally not okay in my eyes, because we don't know what the Jedi did, and I don't think it was 100% good. I mean, I don't think they were in the right to go into the witches in the first place and force these kids and force Osha, take Osha. I don't think they're really in the right for all that. And that's another thing that's not always talked about, is that the Jedi, how do they get Padawans? They literally take kids from their families, you know, which is like a little, it's like a
Which
tough
is
pill to swallow.
okay in their mind, right? Because they're the government. They have the right to test these children. But like that is the institutional problem in itself.
It's very nuanced, you know, because and then this is a case of that we're finally seeing where maybe that wasn't, we're seeing like the negative side effects or the negative outcomes of ripping a child from their family.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Um, I happy I remembered. I'm not letting us pass through it. The quote, Adam, the quote.
Right. Well, it's was in relation to when you had on the rundown, like, is the stranger a Sith Lord? And the answer is yes. Like from Manny Jacinto himself, the answer is yes. And I love so much about this is him talking about what he wanted to put into this character to kind of make it stand out. And this is from an interview with Entertainment Weekly. It says, we wanted a character that was not oppressive and powerful, but when you see him, you feel disturbed by him. We wanted a character that isn't just a Darth Vader type of guy who overpowers the screen. It's the concept of the uncanny. It can be a stumble in a person's walk or a twitch in somebody's eye. It's very subtle. It's just like the uncomfortableness that people experience that they can't quite explain. And that's what we wanted to hone in on for this Sith Lord, which I feel like I love that quote so much. And I feel like they nailed it from the very beginning when he hovers down at the end of last episode. Like that is immediately something we haven't seen before. He didn't just like let or drop down from 100 feet and pound the ground and send everybody flying. He came hovering down, and he's so like cold and so calculated, and everything just feels. It makes me feel uneasy like watching him, because he's very powerful, but it's not the same level of like, or the same type of unease that I feel watching somebody like Darth Vader. It's like two different kinds of fear, which I just think everybody that worked on that character, like Leslie and Manny and whoever was involved in that, they just did a 10 out of 10 job. Like with the introduction, but also the way he plays this whole episode. And shout out to Manny Jacinto, who is phenomenal in this entire episode, because it's just the kind of Sith Lord that I feel like we don't really get to see, like between like I know Palpatine is very operate from the shadows and stuff, but when we get to actually see him be a Sith Lord, he's still pretty like unlimited power, like all that kind of stuff and going. And I feel like that's not the kind of thing that we're going to see from Chimera, which I just love because I hate when Star Wars kind of gets into this cycle of repeating the same. Despite this being like the biggest and most expansive universe ever, they get into a cycle of repeating the same thing and using the same tropes and devices on the same couple of characters. So I love so much that this is what I said in the beginning, like when we did our primer, that I wanted this to feel different. Like I know we're going way back in the timeline. We're stepping outside of the Skywalker saga. I want this to actually feel different. I don't want to be going to Tatooine. I don't want to do all this other crazy stuff. And they're pulling it off to a T with something like this, with how they handle this character. And I love it. I'm glad we know who he is. I'm glad he's alive. I'm glad those bugs didn't kill him. And I can't wait. I hope he's an integral part of these next 3. I hope he doesn't fade back into the shadows and we focus on, other characters, because it feels like with so many other characters wiped out, we kind of have to focus on him at least a little bit, because I don't know who else they're going to do now that Jeki's dead, Yord's dead, all the others like Indara, Kelnaka, all these other Jedi are dead. I'm like, surely Chimera has to be at least like in that same realm of like screen time and everything for the last 3 episodes. At least I hope so, because I do not want them to take him away from me. I love him.
To your point about Chimera being different, like the thing that I love about Darth Vader, at least from like my point of view with like Rebels or like some of the comics, it's just like he's so cool. Like he's like lifting the AT-AT with like the fire behind him. You're like, whoa, he's awesome. But like Chimera to me feels more like horror-ish. Like he's terrifying. But then also I wanted to bring up the composer Michael Abels. Like shout out to him, because the score is also kind of freaky. Like when he's doing that big group fight with all of them, there's like an eerie vibe with like percussion or whatever, like a rhythm that just feels like a heartbeat or something. And it just like contributes to all the other work that they've done. And like he's terrifying, man. I love him.
So here is why very specifically I asked, is he truly a Sith? Or then the next question, is he truly a Sith Lord? Now, I'm not really sure about the first one, but the second one, I'm pretty confident he is not a Sith Lord, but I'll get to that. The one thing I find interesting, and I want to ask that way, is because the High Republic is very known for showing the various branches of different Force users outside of just Jedi Sith, and we get the first peek of that in the Acolyte with the witches on oh my gosh, what's the planet that they come from? Brendok, thank you. With the witches on Brendok, Night Sister-esque, but almost like a different branch of religion, which is like almost all religions. They start out at kind of, this is one thing, and then 2 different groups of people go, well, we actually believe this, and we actually believe this happened, and then they split off, and then that happens again, and then it happens again, and it happens again. And it's why Christianity, for example, there's 50 hundreds of different branches of Christianity. It's kind of like that with the High Republic as well, with their various religions within the Force. Kylo Ren, not a Force user. No, sorry, not a Force user, not a Sith.
Excuse me?
Very much a Force user, not a Sith, right? He is a Knight of Ren, and Ren is almost a title like Darth is within the Sith, because Ren was the first Knight of Ren. And something I found very, very interesting is when he, at the end of this episode, heals Osha's wounds, similarly to how Rey healed Kylo Ren's wounds, Kylo Ren's theme starts playing over Chimera as he's doing this. And I'll pull up, shout out Wikipedia. We stand with Wikipedia here once again, pulling up the Knights of Ren. And you'll notice Ren, the very first Knight of Ren, looks a lot like Chimera. Now this is, and so he's got the mask. He's got the gauntlet that he uses to block the lightsabers. He's got the red saber. Knights of Ren, like Sith, they use red lightsabers, and they're kind of a very similar branch of a dark side Force user. Even he says to Soul, some people may call me a Sith. And then in the Acolyte's new promo of The Stranger, they say, although some people may refer to him as Sith, it seems like very intentional wording to me. that it's not a straight up saying I am this, but it's a very intentional wording. So I think he's either one, he's the first Knight of Ren. I think he might be Ren. Or alternatively, if he is a Sith, I don't think he's the Sith Lord. I think the reason he is looking for an acolyte and not an apprentice is because he is the apprentice. And we have not met the Sith Lord yet. Maybe the Sith Lord doesn't even know that he's going around killing all these Jedi yet, because he probably wouldn't want him doing that. He's probably trying to stay in the shadows. I do still have a maybe hunch that if it's not somebody we know, it's not, if it's not like a Darth Bane or, like any of these guys who I don't know. It's not if it's not Darth Plagueis, if it's not a
Tenebrous is another one that people have been talking about.
Or even who's the Knights of the Old Republic guy from the video game? Raven. I've heard a lot of people saying it's like it could be a Raven too, of some sort, if they're not any of those things, I still have like a inkling at the back of my head, we didn't see her body, that maybe Mother Coral could be the one pulling this guy's strings a little bit. That's still a hunch I do have, but I think either one, he could be the original Ren, or two, or just a Knight of Ren, or two, I think he could be a Sith apprentice, which is why he is looking for his acolyte. Jorgie, what do you think of those theories?
I feel very much confused because I can see it going in all these directions, and I really just want to get inside Leslie Headland's head and be like, what is the answer? Because I can see all of it, but I know for her, I believe there's quotes of her talking about she wanted to explore the Sith. So I'm kind of leaning more towards it's just a Sith situation. Um but I also can see the Ren stuff because why does the Kylo Ren theme play? And it does play twice. It also plays in the beginning of the episode when Osha's waking up, I believe. And so it is interesting what is up with that. And this new term acolyte, what's up with the new term? So it's a lot of questions to be answered. And I could kind of see it going both ways. But what I kind of want is for there to be a master above Chimere, and that he's the apprentice, and that he's having his Ventress or his Galen Merrick type of situation, because Dooku had plenty of other little apprentices. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think it's just Sith situation, but I do hope that there's someone above of Chimera, because I know she also wants to create a multi-season mystery. She's talked about that. So my mind goes, it's well, what would the mystery be outside of this plot? And I think maybe there's another, like Yoda said.
You know what it really reminds me of? Have either of you two watched Naruto or read Naruto or Naruto Shippuden? It reminds me so much of a Orochimaru and the guy with the silver hair and the glasses. I can't remember his name. Kabuto. It reminds me so much of an Orochimaru and Kabuto situation where, Kabuto, oh, I'm a nice guy. I'm a friend. Just kidding. I'm actually super powerful and I can beat everybody up. But there's somebody behind me who's even more powerful. That's the vibes that I'm getting here. And I think it could maybe even be both. He is a Sith, but he doesn't fully buy into all the Sith ideals. So he's starting his own religion, the Knights of Ren. I think that could possibly be something that plays into it as well. But that's the aspect of the story I'm most interested in going forward, is just learning most about him. I do find it kind of odd for me personally that even though I think Amandla Stenberg has been so incredible, they've been crushing it as May and Osha, clearly being able to differentiate the two characters, even though they're the same person playing them, just by, even without the outfits, just by mannerisms and talking styles, she's been incredible. Although I don't actually find myself that invested. If I have one qualm for this episode, which it's not even related to the episode in a bottle, it's more going forward, I don't feel overly invested in Osha and May's story as a whole. I feel like the Acolyte's overall mystery, I'm super bought in. Their individual story, I don't feel super invested in, even though I really like the performances. The part I do find interesting, though, and Adam, you actually weren't there for the first time we talked about this, so that actually makes me more interested in your opinion. Because in episode 3, when we see them as kids, May has a really weird codependent obsession with Osha that Osha does not share. That is still very prevalent in her adulthood here when we see May and Osha meeting for the first time.
Yeah. Well, first off, too, I want to agree with you. I'm also not that like Amanda Stenberg has been incredible. I 100% agree with you, but I think the biggest problem is we kind of see so much of this being a 28-minute episode of TV. Like I think it's 34, but you got 2 minutes of a recap. The credits start at like 4 minutes. It's like 27 to 28 minutes. That's where, to me, it seems like we're missing out on. I hope can y'all hear the car alarm? There's a car alarm going on right outside my window. You can't hear it, can you? Okay, good.
Nope.
I didn't want to talk for the next 45 seconds if everybody could hear a car alarm going behind me. But I think that's the bit where it's like if we got a 40-minute episode of TV, I think we get. I mean, obviously not all 12 minutes of those are going to May and Osha, but I think we probably get a lot more of them because one thing that bothered me a little bit at the beginning of this episode was I felt like. And it slowed down. This was only really the first like 8 to 10 minutes. They were cutting a lot. Like it was like 30 seconds on the fight, 30 seconds with May and Osha, 30 seconds with like May in the cabin by herself, 30 seconds with Osha and Yord. Like I was like, okay, let's hone in on, or like, let's reunite some of this group a little bit, either that or hone in on one group for like a few minutes and then go to the other one. And it almost felt like they were trying to get everybody a little more involved, and it served a little bit of the opposite effect. And I think they got away from that by the second half of the episode because I didn't notice it near the end. It was more just in the beginning. But there was anybody else to. Oh, that's great. I love that.
But that's also, I think, maybe why I'm not as quite invested in the May and Osha story, because it was like, Jackie was my girl. That's who I bonded with. That's who I was invested in. I wanted to see what happened between Jackie and Osha. I wanted Jackie to become a Jedi Knight. Like, that's what I was invested in.
Yeah. Well, I guess now's as good a time as any to because now you're talking about that's like my biggest qualm with this episode and kind of the show in general is that, look, like I'm not one of those people that's like, don't ever kill characters. That's not, I think character deaths can serve as like the strongest point in any story to drive home sadness or like meaning, purpose, all these kinds of things. But, and like, maybe there's a Game of Thrones thing to this too, where like, everybody says when you're watching Game of Thrones, don't get attached to anybody because they're probably it's the same thing with like The Last of Us, like all these shows where people are dying all the time. So it's like, but going into the show, I talked about how excited I was to get to see Carrie-Anne Moss as a Jedi and spend time with her. Axed like 5 minutes in. And I was like, Kel Naka is really, really cool too. Gone like 5 minutes after like 5 minutes of screen time. I was even watching, I'm like, Master Torben seems like this really kind of cool stoic figure that wasn't in the act. He's gone too. I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I've got Jackie. He's gone now too. It's like, okay, Yord Horde, that's fine. I wasn't really on the bandwagon. I'll jump on now. Snap. He's gone now too. I'm like, so what you're telling me here is there's definitely not going to be a season 2 of the show. There's because you eliminated your entire.
But there is.
He wants to.
I saw Leslie's quotes today talking about that, like she designed this and I can't remember who. Oh, what show was it that she was quoting? Oh, that's going to drive me nuts because it was another really, really good show that was like also designed as a more self-contained. Like she was talking about how this is its own story. Like the season, like it's not like we don't set this up to where there's some big cliffhanger to lead into. Like this is its own story that if we want to go forward with more stuff, there's plenty of opportunity to do that. But we're not relying on anything in the future to wrap this up, which I love. I'm very excited for that. But that also makes me think that we're probably not going to get another season of the show. And the fact that if they do, they're going to just have to bring in all new characters because we still have 3 episodes left. And I think I didn't chime in on this earlier, but my favorite theory that I saw when you guys were talking about the Sith Lord and the Knights of Ren and stuff like that, I think the Ren stuff would be really cool. I also think that's a little like we've only seen we see Kylo. We've only seen the Knights of Ren themselves in The Rise of Skywalker, which is live action and animated. That's the farthest in the timeline that we've gone. That is, I know there's stuff past that, but like we haven't gone like movies or TV or animation has not gone past that point. and this is the earliest. So that seems like a long, just for like general audiences, that seems like a really long string to kind of tie together. I think if they were going to do something like that, it would be in another show where like we get to see more like the foundation of one of like Kylo's Knights of Ren. Maybe not like the original founder, just because that seems like that would have a lot going on. But my favorite theory, and I don't know much about the High Republic myself, but I know, like, I did some research on the timelines, and it seemed like it adds up. This was somebody, I apologize, I can't remember who it was. It was in like a Twitter thread, but they were saying that they think the best way, or like a cool way for this to play out, is Chimere right now is like Tenebris's apprentice. That eventually Chimere is going to die, whether Tenebris kills him, whether a Jedi kills him, or whether Plagueis kills him, and then Plagueis then comes under because like that's Tenebris was Plagueis' master. So then they were talking about like the timeline of where this would work right now. That Plagueis is not old enough to be like a master. He's still in that like the younger, the apprentice stage.
We were talking about in our primer is like he'd probably be like in his early teens at most. Like
so that most. I thought right, exactly. So I thought that was a really cool theory that however he gets, however Chimere 2 gets gone, whether if he does later in the season, that would be a really cool way to tie this in, even if it is at the end, to where it's like, oh, now we get to see Plagueis. I mean, not get to see, because it would probably just be like a very short scene, but that'd be a cool way to tie everything together to where it is like we see that it's Star Wars, but it's not like, hey, Palpatine's like, hey, we're going to show you a vision of Palpatine, or we're going to show you Yoda or something like that. Like, it's like we see Darth Plagueis. It's left to us to like interpret that and know it, and then we know he comes under like Tenebris's teachings, mentorship, whatever you want, evil teachings, evil mentorship, whatever you want to call it. So I think that would be, I don't even remember what you asked me, to be honest. It was so long ago, because now I'm just way off talking about something that you didn't ask me about. But for me, with the Sith stuff, with the dark side stuff, I kind of hope that's how we get to see it. Like, I would be cool with the Knights of Ren stuff too. I think like if I had to rank them, like if it was something like, I'd rather see the Plagueis thing first, then the Knights of Ren thing, and then like something like if we just don't get to learn about who's like, if Chimere is truly the only one, like he's the master, and he doesn't have like May is truly his apprentice, and that's kind of it. Like, that would be a little bit of a bummer, because I want there to be somebody above him, somebody pulling the strings. I like that, but I'd still be happy with any of them. But if I had to rank them, that's probably where I'd put them.
One thing I'll say before we move on to another point is I do think you're still going to get more Kilnaka and Indara. I think this next episode is going to be the opposite side of what happened in episode 3. And so we're because like, we had the first two titles were dual names. Then it was, I believe, Destiny. It was 3, and then Day, and then Night. So I think we're going to get the opposite of whatever 3 was. Get to see more of May's perspective, probably being as Chimere is trying to convince Osha to join his side and be a new apprentice. Jorgie, what do you think of the parent trap we are getting in this? May and Osha, they fight. Obviously, May overpowers her because she's been the one training. She takes her clothes, she changes, and now Osha is left with Chimere, and May is going with Soul and the Jedi to do who knows what.
I was like, let's go, because I think they're going to start to understand each other's perspectives. Perhaps that'll help their relationship a little bit, because they're going to see where the other is coming from and what they thought or what they experienced on Brendog during all of that. And did you guys listen to Victoria Monet's song, Power of Two?
Mhm.
I loved that song, and now I'm like, oh, these lyrics have to be about the Parent Trap situation, because she says, I feel ashamed when they call me your name, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be about, when they're calling them the other's name. And so I'm really interested to see where that goes, because there's the shot of like Osha picking up a lightsaber or something from the floor in one of the TV spots, but now I'm like, wait, which one is that? Because now they switch and they have the same hairstyle. So I'm just like really intrigued to see where that ends up. And also too, because Chimere was fully intent on killing May in the beginning, but then he brings her along. So I'm kind of wondering if he knows that that's Osha, or
Yeah,
what the deal is there.
I think he knows that that's Osha. and he prefers it to be Osha. I think he's done with May, but once he's like, I've had enough with this one, but like I'm ready to take on a new pupil, and I think he's excited for that to be Osha. But the part that I don't fully get is, we talked about this last episode, Adam. May's heel turn made a lot of sense because she thought her family was dead and her sister was alive, so she cares more about her sister than whatever dark side path she was on, because she was on that path because she thought her family was dead. So she makes a quick heel turn. Fuck my master. I want to go find my sister. Makes sense. This one, Osha, she's like, all that matters to me is you and I are together. Osha tries to arrest her. What is the game plan for her now that she just left her on this planet, presumably to die? Because she didn't know Chimera was going to be healing her, and she healing her. So presumably just to die, to go with the Jedi. What do you think is her plan? Is she just going to try and finish off her mission, but even without a master?
I think she. Sorry. I think she
no,
probably felt
you go ahead. Yeah.
betrayed. Yeah, I think she probably felt betrayed by Osha just trying to arrest her after that speech, and I think she's probably trying to go finish the job. And then I saw someone pointing out, Yord was the one who understood Basil, and Basil obviously knows what's up, but I'm like thinking he's gonna be trying to tell Soul, and Soul's not gonna have an idea type of situation. But I think she's going to finish the job and be like, because she's like more angry that her sister is still turning on her after all this.
Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. I agree with that. I got to say, I was also very confused by like the who was who and exactly what was going on. I'm not going to be that person. That I will say one of the silliest moments in this episode to me. I loved the like cutting hair with the lightsaber. That was really cool. What I was confused about was I was like, so she leans over, and this is the silliest little nitpick. But you know me, TJ, I have to find these little silly nitpicks. And so she leans over, and I was like, oh, she's just getting ready to like do that. It's going to be so cool. And then it was like, she flipped, and I was like, you're going to cut your head off doing that. Like, no, be careful. Like, I was like, just do this. And your hair, you would have cut your hair off earlier. She said, ooh. And I was like, they gave me so much anxiety watching that because I was like, oh, you're going to cut your head off.
You're like a parent watching their child like cut towards themselves with a knife, and you're like, no, do it the other way.
Stop, no, don't do. Yeah, exactly. And like when you see somebody like cutting, like doing stuff like that, like if you're watching a TikTok video of whatever, people cooking, and they don't have their fingers. That's like one of my biggest pet peeves. Is somebody watches a lot of cooking videos when somebody doesn't have their fingers tucked back and they're just slicing stuff with their fingers sticking straight out. That's exactly the feeling that this gave me. I was like, dude, that seems so dangerous because it was like and a lot of people were complaining about that. Is like they were like, that's a dumb. I thought it was really cool. Like the moment itself was cool.
How do you think all Padawans get their braids clipped?
Right.
I was gonna bring that up. Because like some of the grifters, they'd be complaining because they say that they're big Star Wars fans and that they know everything, but then these things that have a long-standing basis in the lore, legends, and canon, they're like treating it like it's breaking everything when like in the 2002 Clone Wars cartoon, Anakin gets knighted by his hair getting cut off with a lightsaber, or even I saw people complaining about cortosis, and I'm like, that's from the 90s. That's from I Jedi, then in canon with like the Thrawn books and A New Dawn, like this has a long-standing basis, and it's just funny to me that people who claim to be huge Star Wars fans are hating on someone who arguably is a huge Star Wars fan, creating these like deep cut things that are accurate to the lore. And I'm kind of going off on a tangent with the cortosis thing, but like how it's known that that's like not a durable material, and then it literally breaks. His arm brace breaks when Yord hits it. I was just like, how does Leslie Headland like do all of this lore accurate stuff that are all deep cuts? Like I love her. I love everything. Like the hair cutting thing. I was like, let's go.
She's incredible with it, and like it's so obvious now, like as it grows larger, that the grift, it's half people with zero shame and just trying to get popularity, and the other half is genuine lack of brain cells just following what people tell them. And like that, those are perfect examples. But my favorite tweet that I saw on the matter is our guest from episode 3, Jamie Jirac. She tweeted out that the whole like, oh, Mundi said there's no Sith, and now look, there's Sith. The people complaining about that, what it really reminds her of, and I thought this was a perfect example of just like babies who don't have like, you move an object out of their line of sight. They don't have object permanence yet. And so it's like you're playing peekaboo and they actually think you're gone because you hide your face. Like, that's what those people complaining about that remind me of. Like, just because somebody said this, it actually doesn't necessarily mean it's true. That's just what one person said. Like, they could lie, they could be wrong. Like,
He was
there could
also
be things
wrong when
going
he
on
said it.
elsewhere. Yeah, exactly. Palpatine was
And in
right
Attack of the
there when he said
Clones,
it.
all of them sat in front of him in his office and don't sense a thing. So, like, none of this is out of basis with what we've seen in Star Wars for decades.
Exactly. Last question I want to ask the two of you before we get out of here. I'm just going to save what's next because truly, who knows? And we've been on for over an hour and I'm tired. Anyways, but
Same.
the last question I have for the two of you, do you think of the last theory I'll throw by that you'll give me a yes or no, you like it or don't? Do you think Osha could be the next Acolyte? And do you think May could become a Jedi now that they have switched places and are in these spots, potentially getting manipulated once again, or finding their true selves? What do you think, Adam?
That seems like a lot to accomplish in 3 episodes. Maybe there's a way they can, but with like knowing these episodes are probably going to be between 25 and 30 minutes, that seems like a lot. But I mean, that's another thing we talked about last week. So much that I love about this show is that I really have no idea where it's going. So while my gut says no, that things will probably end up about like they were when we started, I could, even as I say it out loud, I'm starting to doubt myself. So I don't know that, and that's like good storytelling. That's what I love about this show, that it's so unpredictable. So I'm going to say no, but it's like 40, it's like 60-40, I think. Now you've even got me double guessing myself.
Jorgie, what do you think? Could Kymir tell Osha the truth about what the Jedi did to her family that we don't know yet, and maybe turn her to the dark side?
I'm hopeful that my girl Osho will not turn to the dark side and become like a full-on Sith. I could see it changing her perception of the Jedi, but because it's Star Wars, I think something sad has to happen, like that's gonna rip our hearts out. I just don't know what it is. I'm hoping May doesn't stay on the dark side. I can hopefully see her maybe not becoming a Jedi, but just leaning more towards the light and kind of getting off of her war path that she's been on. But because it's Star Wars, it's just like it's gonna rip our hearts out somehow, I feel like. And I have no idea how.
We have no idea how, but we will be back next week breaking it all down with the Alternate Timeline podcast, joining us to talk about episode 6 of The Acolyte. You can find my full in-depth recap and review of episode 5 of The Acolyte up on agentsofandom.com. I'll be doing 6, 7, and 8 as well. I also will have my review of The Boys coming soon, The Bear coming soon as I finish these last 2 episodes here. Adam's got some House of the Dragon stuff, recaps and reviews popping out. He's also got The Boys coming out. Dark Matter is finally done. Adam, all the articles are out. Congratulations. That one is off the chest, and I got My Adventures of Superman coming as well. As Adam likes to say, check the website every day because we got lots and lots of great things. The brand new episode of Comic Corner dropped on the feed yesterday, and the brand new House of the Dragon after show on the Agents of Fandom podcast feed, Council of Fire, arrives every Monday as well, with the Listen 3000 crew and Fat Thor. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, hit us a like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and make sure you follow the Agents of Fandom on socials right down there below if you're watching us on YouTube, at Agents Fandom on TikTok and Twitter, Agents of Fandom everywhere else. Jorgie, where can the people find you on socials, and where can they find your content?
The people can find me at Jorgie Writes, spelled Jorgie Writes, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the places, TikTok, and my film reviews, interviews can be found on POCculture.com.
Awesome, and thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely to meet you, and this was a blast.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
We will definitely have to try and make it happen again here in the future, maybe for some Skeleton Crew. We'll call you back on for when we're doing some Skeleton Crew. I think that will be some good timing. Adam, anything else I missed before we get out of here?
No, nothing I can think of. Nailed it.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We will see you next week to talk about episode 6 of The Acolyte. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.